And welcome to SPCs Unleashed. In this episode, we are reprising episode 2. We've posted a bit about this on LinkedIn. The first version we had of the show was very long, theoretical, and full of recommendations of books to read. After our end of year retro, of course, we shifted it to be much more oriented towards sharing our stories from the field and less about going, here's all the things you should read. And we've enjoyed the shift so much, we've decided to go back to the very beginning. So, of course, the very beginning was our discussion in the organizational agility competency, where we were talking about lean thinking people and agile teams, which will be the topic today. And in this show, Niko is going to share his love of family-owned companies, and Stephan thinks skiing is a great way to learn to be agile. But a little bit of a reminder of what this dimension is all about. So lean thinking people and agile teams is really the dimension where we chase true business agility. The focus of it is about not just thinking of agile or safe as something that technology does, but recognizing that when you build true business solutions, you need a lot more than just technology people. So the kind of cliff notes are everyone involved in solution delivery is trained in lean and agile methods and embraces their value principles and practices, extending the mindset, values, and principles to the enterprise, getting out of the technology trap, looking at different patterns for bringing business and technology together under the umbrella of agile. But let's, before we get too deep into it, throw to Niko. Niko, your true passion when it comes to lean thinking people and agile teams.
I just thought before when you explained that we're doing redoing an episode. It's like with Disney. We had the cartoon version. Now we have the more fun version. So I'm really looking forward to redoing it. So what is my true passion? It's really about business agility and finding sponsors who want to change. And that's the reason, by the way, why I love family-owned companies, because they usually have a sponsor, the owner who is CEO, who really wants to do something with the company. So my true passion is finding the why in the change.
And Stefan, it wouldn't be you if it wasn't something to do with sports or the military. Tell us about skiing and
Yeah,
business agility.
you're right. It's a passion and a challenge, right? It's enterprise sport because you mentioned business agility. You don't want to implement safe. You don't want to introduce agile practices. It's all about business agility, and that's like being on a ski slope. And you can't stand on the side and comment on how they do it, how good they are, how bad they are. You have to put your skis on. And if you are a beginner, yes, you're a beginner, even as a leader, as a developer, as whatever role you have, you'll learn how to ski. And over the time, you do the slalom, you do the descent, you are becoming a pro. It's enterprise sport.
I don't think I'm ever going to be doing a slalom, I've got to be honest. My struggle is to not fall too far behind my family when we ski.
It's still a family being on a ski day.
And laughing
I,
at
I
that.
just wonder, I just wonder, Stefan, what's the why behind skiing?
It's getting fit and it's a lot of fun. And you'll learn a lot about yourself. You
Yeah,
think you can
but
do it, and then you're on the slope, and physics hits you, the world hits you. Welcome to real life.
and for that you have to learn some principle things and have a thinking so they can enjoy the why. Great, thank you.
All right, so let's move away from skiing for a second. Um, the core of this dimension is really a kind of 1, 2, 3 graphic that starts with being agile, step 1, know your value stream, step 2, and then specialize principles and practices, step 3. So if we think about beginning with being agile, the agile journey for most people actually starts in the training room. They are part of an area of their company that is starting to move down the agile path. Traditionally, it would have been a room full of technologists. When we're starting to think about business agility, it's often a room full of people that are actually not necessarily technologists. And it's quite often, as an SPC, it's a really interesting leap, taking a bunch of courses that feel very comfortable in a technology audience and teaching them to a business audience. So I'd like to throw to Niko. When you started teaching SAFe courses to non-technical audiences, what were some of the secrets you found in terms of bringing these concepts to life outside the technology context?
Yeah, first I was happy that the non-IT people show up because the years before it was it's just an IT thing. I don't have to know. I just order it and instead of living it. So having people there, it's from the non-IT side. It's great. But then you have to keep them in the training so they are can connect to their experience, and that's an important thing, connecting to their experience. So as an SPC, when you give trainings, I think one important thing is to understand there's a difference between knowing something and understand something. So if you remember the reverse bicycle video from the old trainings from Smarter Every Day, there you have a bicycle. If you go in this direction with your not a wheel, how is it called? My English, great.
Handlebar.
I should have prepared.
Handlebar.
With the handlebar, the wheel goes in this direction, so it goes in the opposite direction, and you see, oh, okay, I've learned it. I understand now how it works. And then if you sit on the bicycle, it's impossible. And in the old days, I had one of these bicycles, and I had it in my trainings, and people didn't believe. So it's really important as a trainer to connect and to have a to create an environment where people can connect to their experience and have a learning moment. And my recipe is having more exercises, having exercises that can connect. For instance, a flow exercise where they can really understand what flow means, what bottleneck means, what cross-functional teams means. Even in estimation, sometimes I have my own cards, not the cards that has a scaled agile in the trainings, because they can connect maybe to other animals they know better and to realize what's important in estimation. So people think they have understood it fast, but they really need exercises, need simulations to really get it. And if we go to German, that's not my native language, but a language I master or conquer the best, is we have for understanding also a term called begreifen. And begreifen has also a word which means greifen, and this is a touching, grabbing. So if you want to understand something, you need to touch it. It's not only reading and talking; it's also playing around. So I love this word. It's a pity that something similar exists in English, or maybe Mark knows one.
Nothing that sounds nearly as cool as Greifin,
Ooh, Greifin.
which I probably horrendously mangled the pronunciation of.
What's perfect?
My high school German was almost starting to come back to me by the end of the week in Berlin. I would sit and listen to a conversation and go, oh, I'm picking up some words there. I've got a vague idea what they're talking about. However, one of the bits, the classic bits where it gets really challenging, and we chatted about this last episode when we're talking about DevOps and the continuous delivery pipeline, was that section of Leading Safe where you are talking about DevOps. And it's really tempting to skip it with a business group, and all the business people go, well, DevOps is just, that's a technology thing. And we had a fun chat about that last week. And Stephan, I think you wanted to play in the world of the CDP when you're talking about business audience and SAFe courses. Take us away.
Yeah, let me pick up the thread from Niko. This begreifen, grab the stuff. I use that in almost all the courses. And I've learned from good other teachers. Start with where's the job to be done? Where's your actual challenge? Where's your pain point? Where are your pain points? And that immediately puts the people into a situation where they start not only understanding and listening stuff, but also starting mapping stuff, structural elements, principles into their context. So they start contextualizing during the course. And I love the CDP, the continuous delivery pipeline. It looks software, right? But it is so helpful even for non-software context, for business context. And I asked the attendees after the continuous exploration, which is pretty general when it comes to continuous integration, how do you build stuff? How do you kind of bring it back to the context you're in? How do you test end to end? Maybe with friends and family. How do you create a staging environment where you gradually jump from one stable condition into another until you see, okay, what we build, what we think should be working starts really working. And I always ask the people, in your context, what does that mean? What is building? What is integrating? What is monitoring in a business context? Or do you just create stuff, fire and forget, and magically months and years after you see some success, but you can't tie it back to where you started with your exploration, your integration, you deployed some stuff, but you never cared about it. What is the hypothesis behind it? What is the benefit, right? And after each lesson in a course, I ask people again, go back to your challenge, to your pain point. What kind of principle, what part of the teaching is now covering something of your actual situation? I love the CDP. It's not a technical thing. It's really your delivery pipeline as an enterprise, and it adheres even to business.
Maybe I can add something as an advice for the SPCs who are trainers. Sometimes what I see when I co-pair or co-train with young SPCs who want to just not do it alone, they always want to skip the last exercise in every section, which is reflect, make a
Yep.
pause, think about, because yeah, it's 5 minutes and I don't know how to debrief it. Let's skip it, and I think it's not the best idea. If you have business people in it, they need this time. Also technology people need this time, but business people, because it's new to them, they need more time to think, how can I connect it to my experience? So please don't skip this end. Just make a 20-minute break for those who don't want to do it exercise. Let them go away and make a 20-minute break and give the time for the others to reflect about what they have learned, how can they connect it to practice. So thank you, Stephan, for your story.
So I think one thing that I'd just add, listening to both of you, is oftentimes for business people, the agile language is very alienating. It's a lot of buzzwords and acronyms, and they all sound very technical. And I love listening to you, Stephan, talking about helping that audience find the mapping to their world and taking that time early in the course to go, hey, we've related these concepts, and now for the rest of the time we're together, I've actually learnt the language you use. And I, remember when we talked about build, we're talking about this. So it's a great starting connection. Now, we're out of the training room, and step 2 in this dimension in the little infographic is know your value stream. Now, know your value stream and value stream mapping, that's a whole, we do episodes on end about that. We're not going to dig too deeply there this time, but one of the triggers that's going to take you beyond technology is actually knowing your value stream. The moment when you recognize it's about more than just building software or hardware is when you look at a value stream and say, hey, we've got to get some idea all the way from being a great idea to producing value. And you ask yourself, what are the skills we need to do that? We might need some skills around changing processes, reskilling a workforce, some kind of go-to-market strategy. There's all kinds of skills you need when you're truly thinking idea to value. And it's about bringing them all together under one umbrella, one team, one mission. And that's as often as not, there's probably 2 patterns. For most people, they don't get into this beyond technology to business agility on day one because they start in technology and eventually they realize that to really get flow of value, they've got to get out. Sometimes you're lucky you get to start in business agility in the first place. But digging a little bit deeper into those early days, right? We know the idea of cross-functional teams of engineers using Agile to deliver better products. It's been around a long time. And a few episodes ago, we talked about team and technical agility. And a lot of that is the basics that's been around for 25, 30 years for Agile software team. When you start coaching a team that has maybe no technical people in it, or maybe half and half technical and non-technical people, and you start to think about the practices that, let's say I'm an HR team, what does a splitting of a story look like? And you've got to, again, bring these practices to life for people doing jobs that aren't building software. You've got to go back to principles to specialize the practices and bring them to life. So, Stephan, I think you love experimentation when it comes to helping non-technical folks start to get their heads around how to bring the Agile practices into their own world. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a few aspects in it that I really love. You just mentioned it, Mark. Know your value stream. Go where it happens. You do it either physically or you do it virtually, also in courses or when you do coaching. You ask the people, what are we supporting? What are we delivering finally that helps the value stream to get better over the time? How do we make them proficient? How do we make them successful? And how do we keep them successful? And if you then again dive into the more technical aspect of how do we grab and explore demand, how do we deliver, it comes back to a Kanban system. And now people start to understand you can have a Kanban system full of demand, full of work, a lot of stuff is going on, but nothing is being delivered or is being used by the value stream, right? One of my first arts I was allowed to support was an HR art because they always faced the accusation, guys, you're ingenious, but either you're too early with your ideas, you're too late, but never on spot. You're not supporting the organization. You're not supporting the different value streams. Although they had HR business partners, lots of good silos, it didn't work. And head of HR said, okay, how can we solve that? And we did a virtual Gemba and we did a physical Gemba, and we just listened. And that's how we started training. That's how we started first PI planning. And we had this kind of mantra. We always were asking each other, is it helpful for the value stream we are supporting? That kept us on track. And then we went to the continuous delivery pipeline and we said, okay, where are we? Are we already doing some stuff? And is it just following the demand or are we starting experimenting? Could it be more like this or that? What are the options? And now you start introducing the principles. Okay, you have lots of variability. Keep the options open. Don't just produce something and deliver it. Maybe you deliver something that might cover different aspects, different contexts, and you are experimenting while you are delivering stuff. And that's a lot of learning as well. And that's how I kind of introduced, again, the continuous delivery pipeline as a means, introduced lots of structural elements, but in the end, know your value stream. Always go there, find out what it is. And guess what? Some of these HR guys have never been in front of the operative value streams, right? They had a program for prospects. They got in contact with those guys when they were nominated to be part of the program, not before, and even after they didn't care. And all of a sudden they opened up the horizon and it started working, and that's the magic in it.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite real business agility experiences was actually with a government agency, and their arts were probably 60% technology skill set, 40% business skill set, beautifully blended together in true cross-functional teams. And they also did a great job of bringing folks from around the business into their life and making them a part of the vision. And we started getting requests from all kinds of departments. And the one that always stands in my head was the policy department. So this was the area where when the government was considering a change of policy or change of legislation, they would go to these guys and say, what's the impact if we change the legislation like this? And so their teams basically sat and figured out what the impacts would be of policy changes on the way the agency operated. And they're like, we want to be agile. We want to be an art. It's like, not quite sure on art, but let's help you start using some of the agile stuff, because what they really loved when they worked with our arts was looking at the culture. And so we made up a little one-day introduction to agile course. It was like, let's teach you some fun foundations and you can start to bring them into the way you work to gain, a chance to experiment with them. And the one that always resonated most was the marshmallow game. We would play the marshmallow game because, of course, that's got this wonderful learning about experimentation and experimentation and integration in a very relatable concept. And getting just that, let's experiment, let's try things out and let's learn fast, just worked everywhere. But if we go a little bit deeper down this path, Niko, I've been watching you thinking while you listen. What would you add?
You offered so many connections that I can make a half an hour monologue, which wouldn't be healthy for our show here.
I'll go
I
for a
just
coffee
want to
then.
add.
See you.
Exactly. No. Let me think where to connect. Connecting business people with IT. In my beginnings, I did a lot of just DevOps stuff, which is developers and IT, and they are quite similar. But there was still a huge gap. So what do we do with testers when they have nothing to test? Do we want to buy them anyway a salary? They have no jobs. They have to wait until something is finished. Oh, maybe they can write requirements. Maybe they can write or help with the condition of satisfaction or with the acceptance criteria. So it was really the first beginnings of working cross-functional. And I remember these hard discussions. It doesn't make sense because I pay them for testing and now they have nothing to do. And this become much more difficult when business people and other people join in the trains or the teams. Uh, then I had some explanation like cross-functional means everybody can do everything. So no, the team can do everything. Not everybody can do everything. And then with having non-IT people on the teams and on the arts, it's a different smell. Let's say you have some kind of a like with animals, they have different smells depending on different kind of animals they are. And if you mix this, they have problems to approach each other because they have a different language, they behave differently, they have learned different patterns. And when I recall this episode, the first time we recorded it, I talked a lot about systemic coaching and why it's important for me. And Mark, you asked a lot of stuff. I think we had 10 minutes about only systemic coaching. And I think a good SPC has to be a coach too. Uh, Best a systemic coach, but a coach too, because you have to use the language of the people who have to become agile, because agile isn't the goal. You remember, Stephan, what Stephan said? It's not the goal be agile. It's using the agile things to become faster, to become better, to have a better user feedback. So they have their own vocabulary. And you, as an SPC, as a coach, must master this discipline in connecting words. No, this time it's world, not words. Ah, gosh. You, as an SPC, you have to master this discipline in connecting the worlds of and the languages of the people. So this is really, really important. And in my case, the systemic education helped me to have synonyms for things I had in Agile, in Safe, to realize, okay, if I quote the Greifin framework, I can quote it differently with another jargon, and the people understand what I'm saying. And I think this is an important part.
May I pick that up, Nico? Kind of tying the principles and the basics of lean and agile again to your context. It starts in a course like Leading Safe, right? We all know day one, morning and afternoon, 10 principles. It can be boring, right? Because it's kind of dry. And if you then really start mapping that to your challenges, to your pain points, you talk about the system and you are a systemic coach already tying those principles to your context. And that guides you in the first steps. And over the time, some of those principles might become second nature. They are then engraved in your DNA, and other ones have to be supported, have to be instilled. And it's and really I'm passionate about this journey as a coach, right? But I have to be ahead like 2 to 3 steps, thinking in a systemic way what helps this cross-functional team, and also thinking ahead, who are they supporting, what are they supporting, what are they doing? And that's a lot of change. Transformation never stops. Awesome stuff.
All right, so moving on. Obviously, if you haven't figured it out yet, both Stephan and Niko have talked about principles and values a lot. And when you're helping a group of non-technical people start to wrap their head around this stuff, the more you go back to principle and have a discussion that says, here's how we build it, bring it to life in your specific context and skill set, the better it's going to be. But there have been areas of the framework that have progressed in the practice world to start to more explicitly give guidance around practice adaptation as opposed to always having to go back to principles. And I think one of those for me is built-in quality. I remember, way back in the beginning, it wasn't built-in quality, it was XP. And, we had the set of slides, which was, Dean's 8 favorite XP practices. And as an ex-XP guy, I used to love it when those came along and have a lot of fun and watch the business people completely switch off. And over time, I figured out using my XP knowledge, there were ways I could bring the ideas to life for business people. I had a crazy pair drawing activity that I learnt at an Agile Games conference that I used to love to use to illustrate how pair work worked. But as it became built-in quality, and that really was when SAFe made the shift into cyber physical with 4.5. But then most recently, they introduced these wonderful new building blocks. We know built-in quality is just essential to Agile. Niko, what's your secret to bringing built-in quality to life for non-technical?
It's the same secret as before. So even in the old versions, I just jumped over the slides back and forward, and to say, okay, in IT we do this, and how's in your context? So we have pair programming, but it's not something in IT. You can do pair working anyway with everything. You can make brochures in pairing. You can make legal lawsuits in pairing. So it's not an IT thing. There are some things in IT and other things not, and which is what is the basic for you, or what is the basic in general, and then telling them, okay, in IT it's easy. I have an IT background. I love XP. I know where to go. When I need details of this, I go to XP. If you're from a cyber physical environment, there are also standards. If you are from a marketing environment or HR environment, I'm sure there are some tools, there are some techniques. Find them and embed them. And then I liked the change with the Lego style. Then it's clear it's just you have to find the stone. And if there is no stone, create one because you need one in your own discipline. And that's the way how I explained it and how I used it. I really involve them. What is, in your case, the meaning of this and this? Create your own Lego stone on top of it. That in your discipline, quality is also there.
So, Stephan, you like the V model, and most business people have never heard of the V model. Tell me how that works for you.
Okay, let me start with the Lego bricks that Niko mentioned, right? I love playing around, and the bricks help you to see where's the foundation, and now we have a common understanding what are the basic quality practices that adhere to any type of team, right? And picking up XP, what you mentioned, Mark, it's still in there, right? Collective ownership, do the pair work, get some perspective in, don't do the work alone, all that stuff, awesome stuff. So, and now on top, you start building other bricks that are relevant to your domain. And before we go into those slides, and I've learned that from my buddy, Sasha, he always starts with the V model. And I'm using it as well. What is the V model? The V model says, okay, on one of the branches, you start collecting the demand. Someone has to document it. Then someone has to take it, study it, build it. You have to integrate it. And then on the other branch, you have a series of tests. You have the unit tests, integration tests, acceptance tests, finally some regression tests. And the problem or the challenge with the V model is how likely is it that the guy who documents the demand has put everything in that document? What's the probability? And I ask the people and they say, yeah, probably he loses 20% of what was talked about. How likely is it that now the developer understands what's in the document? Because we throw it over the fence. You have to read it. You have to understand it. There's no conversation, right? There's a requirements engineer, business analyst, does the job, hands it over to the developer. How likely is it that the developer gets 100% right of the document when he starts coding? Maybe 80%, even less, right? And then we go through the V model. What's the probability? What's the probability that the next step, the next silo gets it right? And then we do the math, and people have a big aha moment. Less than 30 or 20% of all the features and the stories arrive at the end of the V model in a good shape. So that's not lean. And now you go back to lean and say, guys, how can we do that in a lean way? How can we do it in a way that we don't waste time and knowledge and people in a silly way. And then you start talking about shifting left. How do you learn together? How do you collaborate? How do you implement a swarming principle, right? It's not about Scrum and Kanban, it's about swarming around one item. And let's find out how we can bring in the test first. How will we test it? How will we check the benefit hypothesis before we start creating a concept or even talking about lines of code? And that's very helpful. And that creates a lot of discussions. And then we let them explore what are your Lego bricks that you need to build quality. So understanding quality, building quality, and the other step, if you're ongoing, is how do you keep the quality? And it becomes again part of your DNA because you found out, you built it in, and it's not safe telling you you have to do it. Because if somebody tells me I have to do it, I push back. I don't have to.
That sounds so much more sophisticated than my version.
It's simple.
So I think of the V model as V is for the valley of despair. But no, my favorite example is actually talking about putting together a PowerPoint presentation for an executive or for an executive briefing. Because, so many people have had to do that at some stage of their life. And it's how often have you put together a really beautiful set of slides and you've sweated over them? And then you sit down with the executive who's going to use them. And before you know it, there's red pen everywhere. And you're back to the beginning. Wouldn't it have been beautiful to actually get some feedback and see the red pen before you'd spent so much time polishing them? Really simple ones. But let's move on. So one of the other things that has really been starting to be formalized as SAFE's gone further down the business agility path is the idea of patterns for bringing together business and technology. And there were 5 patterns that were published. There was the business-enabled art, so an art that's got a combination of business and technology people as members. There was the Agile business train, which was generally something a little bit more significant, and it was actually operating the business as well as the development of products for the business under one roof in the art. Agile executive teams, Agile business functions, right? So perhaps the policy group that I was talking about before might have been an example of an Agile business function. And then combined portfolios which bring together your operational value streams and your development value streams in a single portfolio. So I know what I've encountered most, and I know almost every art that I've coached over the last 7 or 8 years has been a business-enabled art. But I'm curious, Niko, what are the 2 most common ones that you've seen, and what challenged you most as a coach working with?
Yeah, I was first shocked when I've seen the patterns, and they are, for those who don't know where they are on the bottom left part here, business and technology. It's really there on the bottom, on the big picture, bottom left. And I was shocked because, and I remember I went to Rebecca during the masterclass in January to the version 6 and told her, but every art should be business enabled. Why it's now a pattern? And she told me, yeah, would be nice, but the real world, the real world is saying something else, and we want to emphasize it again. It has to be business enabled. Okay, now I got it. Because I always had, okay, not always. I tried to have business enabled arts. I also had fake arts, by the way, and one of my clients called them farts, fake arts. But if it's not a fake art, it's really a business enabled art. So that's for me standard. Exactly. And the other one, let me check again, was this enabled arts. Executive teams. Yeah, this pattern. I started my career with Agile and coaching with coaching teams, dev teams, and now I'm coaching executives, doing the same thing as before with a different vocabulary, with different people, but still it's the same job. And what I really love when you have C-level people or people from business or executive business team is how they appreciate and embrace this culture with experience and with learning. So one of my highlight moments was an executive, an owner of the company, a family-owned company, being one of the owners and the CEO, one of the CEOs. being in a PI planning for the first time, and he started this overview of the PI planning, his speech, with "It's the first time for me, and I'm not knowing if I'm doing good or not good. So please, at the end, give me feedback. I want to improve." Then I said to myself, "Wow, that's cool. It's not somebody making a show. The first 15 minutes is I tell you about my company and I tell you why you're important. It's just I will now have a talk 15 minutes instead of 1 hour and before the PI planning, and I really want to hear your feedback because I want to improve." And that was also living the principles, living what they try to preach, and that's what I really love there. So I love the business enabled arts because they should be standard, and I love the agile executive teams as a pattern. Yeah.
So when you're coaching an agile executive team, Niko, are you getting them running Scrum? Are they using the full Scrum? What does an agile executive team feel like for you when you're coaching them into what practices mean to them?
In my case, it was always a Kanban kind of flavor. I cannot explain why. Uh, it felt for me easier, even if Kanban is harder. If you do proper Kanban, it's much more harder than if you do Scrum. But I thought if I try to explain them Scrum, it will smell technical. And Kanban, you can just say it's about flow, it's about a time to market, it's about you can use their words because it's much more opener. Or let's take the Shuhari level. For me, sometimes Scrum is on the Shu level recipe. You do it this way, and Kanban is one level above in my feeling. So you can do more, and of course it's harder. You cannot just say I'm doing Kanban and now I have post-its flowing somewhere. It has some rules, it has policies, it has practices and principles. It has a lot of bone or meat around the bone. Sorry, in this direction. So I started with Kanban because it felt natural for executives, and it didn't have to teach them. So I think Scrum needs more teaching upfront, and Kanban was much more natural. Maybe I'm wrong, but was what my feeling told me.
What about you, Stefan? What would your answer to that question be?
Um, if you look at the different roles like executives, business owners, those who are in charge of the company and responsible for the future of a company, one of the first focal points introducing an agile executive team is, guys, how do we tie strategy to what's going on in the company? Like, how do you make sure if you put portfolio and strategy together, it's congruent? And that creates some good executive workshops. Again, contextualize where they are. And sometimes they might find out, hey, our strategy is more prone for bullshit bingo. How do we get the strategic themes right? So people can use it. And what I've seen as well in an insurance, that finally the executive team said, okay, let's get a kind of agile coach in who serves as a team coach. And during the executive team meetings or even extended executive team meeting, they had clear rules and it felt like a Scrum team, right? What's the focus today? Who's talking what? And it wasn't about status and progress. It was about, okay, what's the focus now for the next iteration, whatever you call it. And it changed. And also this agile coach was allowed to say, hey, dear CEO, your 3 minutes are over. We're moving to the next C level. Okay. That's how it works. And again, beside having fun, it's more focused and instead of not helping each other because each C level is in his silo, has his incentive. Now they start talking about, oh, your incentive is probably counterproductive for the enterprise. Why don't we change it? Or mine doesn't help a lot in this context. And what I've seen over and over again, if you start with those agile executive teams, is focus on the core business, what is supportive business, and what's our duty as leaders. And yeah, you probably can't see my eyes start glowing, right? When I talk about this pattern. And same experience like Niko, more and more we start with that pattern at the beginning, at the tipping point. based on training, based on what we do.
And on this level, sorry, Mark, on this level as an SPC, because it's called SPC Unleashed, or it's give you more tips how you can survive in these dimensions. It's even if it sounds similar, it's completely different. You need different approaches, how you connect to people. You need a different vocabulary. So don't go blind and say, I was the best team coach ever. Let's go coach executives. It feels similar, but it's not similar because there are hidden agendas. There are more silos than a dev team. So it's really a different job. It is a way you have to go, and not say, oh, Niko just said he's doing now executive coaching. It's the same as team coaching. It's not really. And of course, if the people want to change something, they will live these practices. They will live this lean thinking, lean and agile. By the way, that's why I love again a company, family-owned companies, because they usually want to change something. Another, how can I keep my bonus and dancing agile instead of doing agile or being agile? So yeah, it's a different discipline. So maybe you have to watch the old episode with all the books and all the all the conference you have to go, because then you will get a lot of tips for your journey to coach on this level.
I would say for me, the number one tip if you're coaching an agile executive team is you need facilitation skills. It's not about stand-ups or retrospectives or anything else. It's about being able to facilitate that group of people having better conversations. And yeah. But Stephan, going back to strategy bingo, combined portfolios is something that is one of your favorites in these new patterns. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it emerged over the time, right? It's not an IT thing. It's enterprise sport. So going back to the passion and the challenge, and combined portfolios, we found out over the time that your portfolio is much more than what you think. It's not a number of development value streams. It includes the operational value streams. And if you talk OVS, you also talk about journeys, customer journeys, user journeys. So that means your picture is everything from customer journey through the operational value stream down to where you might be in the development value stream. So combined portfolios, they emerge almost naturally, but we have to deal with it. And what is the challenge? Have the same language, because business people have a different language than the IT or R&D people, and the combined portfolio fosters that, right? You bring them together, and it brings back this perspective. Innovation comes from the development value stream on behalf of the operational value stream. But to do so, and to do it right at the right time, you need to understand the operational value stream. So you, over the time, a combined portfolio for me is a natural evolution along the transformation journey. And I, as an SPC, I, as a coach, I have to deal with that. Again, as Niko said, like with the executives, there might be new language. How do you bring that together? There might be some stuff we don't have in SAFe. In SAFe, we talk epics, capabilities, feature stories. The business talks about initiatives, talks about ambitions, whatever. How do you bring that together? Or the business in a government area still has some stuff like in Switzerland, Hermes, right? It's kind of a tailoring system, a system you have to tailor. And how do you connect that? How you combine it? And that's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun, because in the end, you will see there's a lot of benefit in it.
So then if you had to, just one sentence, Stephan, to sum up lean thinking people and agile teams and your advice to an SPC, what's that one sentence?
That one sentence would be, look along the whole slope. Where do you start? Where do you ski? And where do you want to end up? Where do you want to cross the line?
And don't go too fast or you might crash.
It's always controlled, and it's a lot of technique. It's a lot of practice. Yeah.
Niko, what about you? What's your one sentence?
I have two views on the same point. So, we talked about connecting to the people. So one connection point will be start with the man in the mirror. So music style, Michael Jackson style. If you don't like this, You can have a Greek philosopher which said, move yourself to move the world. So choose, start with the man in the mirror or move yourself to move the world.
And it's lucky you gave us the Michael Jackson hint, because when I listened, it sounded like you were saying start with the man in the mirror.
In the mirror board, yeah, great. Mark, what's your sentence, by the way? What's your sentence? How would summarize it?
My sentence is, if you want mission-based teams that produce business outcomes, you're probably going to need some business skills on them.
Oh, yeah. Start with the man in the mirror board. Yeah, great.
He's in it too.
So let's talk about measure and grow. And I see, looking at the Miro board, that we have landed in very different places. Niko, take us away. And I'll just screen share while we're doing that.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, for me, it's really. I read a quote days ago. The bottleneck is always on the top of the bottle. So you really should start also with leadership, or you should start with leadership. Lean thinking managers, lean thinking teachers. So my best experience was when a C-level person explained how the portfolio works, and it was a workshop to empower epic owners writing epics. And he explained in his language, in his environment, how this works, and he answered the Q&As. And for me, it was huge. I thought, wow, I'm not needed anymore because he can explain it better than I. And yeah, you start, in my opinion, with the leaders, and that's why, if this is given, I think it's not a no-brainer afterwards, but it's really an important first step, because you have support from the top, and they're speaking the language they are asking from the people. So it's really, leaders are trained and they can walk this journey.
All right. Stephan, you beg to differ.
He's wrong. No.
I know, I'm wrong. I'm wrong, but I'm learning. That's okay. I'm learning from you guys. So I was kind of circling over, is it more towards teams? Because we talked a lot about these teams with the lean agile mindset. But in there's much more than only teams. You have shared services, you have the whole enterprise. I thought about leaders are trained. That was my first choice, Niko. I was there as well. And then I moved it to Agile. HR brings an Agile mindset, values and principles to hiring, engaging and retaining people. No matter where you are in the transformation, you might have already Agile teams, the technical teams, the engineering teams, but how do you get into the business domain? How do you hire good people? And we've learned from people like Fabiola, okay, don't hire for skill set, hire for attitude, because learning is more important than what you got in your backpack at the moment. So for me, HR comes in big time here, supporting a transformation. And just recently, we had some implementing safe courses in a transformation. We had the LACE workshop. It boils down to, we need the support of HR. Otherwise, we can't have those new profiles. We can't hire people because maybe HR might be inhibiting some stuff. We don't want that, right? So probably, and let me use the analogy back to sports. Agile HR is all the good stuff in the background, making it happen. You have the right people at the right time. Some are still at the bottom station, some are already up the hill doing some fabulous skiing, and some are still in the beginner's class.
When you explain it, it sounds right. Oh gosh, okay. Mark, you're off. Why are you wrong? No.
I'm never wrong. Just ask my wife. No.
Oh,
Ooh.
okay. I'll do that, Mark. I'll do it.
Look, and I think probably the first comment, Niko, and your choice around leadership, I couldn't agree more that it's critical, but I really felt leadership is the lean agile leadership competency. And back in that land of the journey we've been going on of like what lives where, and it's like, yeah, leadership is just unbelievably critical, and you've got to get them on the journey. You've got to get them trained. You've got to set them up to lead instead of you trying to lead. But that's a different dimension for me. It's a different concept. So I've got business teams on the train, and they're participating in delivering and supporting innovative solutions. And it's kind of like, we've all said, hang on a second, business enabled arts, that's just the way you do it. because it is just the way we've been doing it. But I think it's depressing how many people I talk to out the world, SPCs, trying to implement SAFe and not getting business enabled arts. So what's the sign you've crossed out of technology? You got business teams on your trains and you're starting to actually think about end-to-end value.
Yeah.
Niko, he's right.
Yeah,
Mark nailed it
unfortunately,
again,
yeah.
right?
So be
Okay.
smart, don't fart, do business enabled trains. Yeah.
Now we normally have a last segment here, which is what measurement is missing.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you guys didn't do any homework on it. So I'm going to share mine and we'll give you a second to think
Yeah.
about it, right? If I was going to add one measure to measure and grow, it would be that the terms business teams and technology teams are disappearing, right? We just got teams. And I've got the story that goes behind that. Again, it was this government organization that I shared a little bit about earlier. One of the people in this organization was, I forget the name of his role, but fundamentally, any time that there was talkback radio, PR sessions, the voice of the agency to the public, this was the guy who got sent. And so he'd been around forever and he was trusted to know what was happening in the agency and represent the culture to the public. And he came and he visited the first art that we'd launched there when they were about kind of 9 months into their journey. And it was, of course, a business-enabled art. And he went and he visited them. They were all co-located. They had amazing visuals. And he toured the floor. And he got to the end, and in the spirit of the Europeans free speaking, I'm going to quote him exactly. He said, "You can't bullshit a bullshitter."
Good one.
And he said, "People had told me that you guys had been breaking down cultural walls between technology and business stuff. And I've just walked the floor and I've seen 120 people and I couldn't tell you who was from technology and who was from the business." And I love that sign. So I bought you a bit of time. Have you dreamed up a measurement that's missing off the cuff, or did I not buy you enough?
Let me be a bit mischievous here, Mark. Following your thoughts, right? Tearing down the walls between business and technology. Why not having one operating model if you have combined portfolios, if you do the work together, we are still on exploration path having a dual operating model, but in the future probably we should have one operating model. And how do you measure that? How do you measure that people are doing work together and not distinguishing between this is business, this is technology? That would be my dream, or dream measurement.
I like that, Train.
Maybe we need the category dream and grow and not measure and grow.
You can measure dreams if they're measurable.
Exactly. No, so for me it's okay. I like the last statement.
All right. Then in that case, that has been the reprise of episode 2. Organizational agility, lean thinking people, and agile teams. And in our next episode, we're going to reprise episode 3, and we're going to talk about agile teams, but agile teams in the team and technical agility competency, as opposed to in the organizational agility one.